pretend that this is my first lecture and say hi, welcome, all that stuff first. Right, let me rearrange this. Okay, let me just give a quick show of hands. Who here, out of students here, took a course in economics during high school? Nope. Oh, there. And who took a sort of a basic principles course in your first year? 경제학 원론 들으신 경우. So for others, so those of you who haven't raised hand to either, you haven't learned a thing about economics. Is that correct? Or do you have sort of basic knowledge of economics? Or I should have asked this in my first lecture, first of all, I think. So you'll have very basic knowledge of economics at best for the rest of you, right? Okay, right. So today I'm just going to give you a brief introduction about how market works. You know, like before we begin to talk about optimization, all the big words that I threw in on Wednesday, I think the natural starting point, the best starting point is the market. And then optimization can come after that, okay? So first of all, economics, I mean, if you read that, one of the most popular texts, I mean, have you heard of any popular economics textbooks by, yes, right? When the exactly. When we open his Principles of Economics page, in the first few pages, there's one particular joke that comes up, right? Apparently, in this island surrounded by no one, you know, like 3 people were going from A to B. They meet a storm, and their plane crashes, and they land on this no man's land. It is really desert island, and then they find that one of the fellow passengers had this tin of tuna in the suitcase, but the top is broken, so you can't open it like how you would open to one 참치 or 사조 참치 like that. Okay, so and they don't have a knife or any tools. So the chemist, one of the passengers was chemist, and he says, "Okay, I think what I can do is let's make a fire, and then I don't know, just like the can will pop open because the pressure, blah blah blah." And then another person is a physicist, and he says, "Let's find a really sharp rock, and then we just throw the can onto the rock until the top cracks." And then the third person is an economist, and he says, "Okay, let's assume we have a top, you know, we assume we have a bottle opener, then the can opener, and then everything will be fixed." So that's supposed to be a joke, but no one laughed, so that's the reason why I'm not using Nanhu's textbook. The reason why I'm telling you that joke is because the perception of economists and us finance academics are not particularly great, especially following the crash in 2008. You know, we are supposed to be these unrealistic, living outside the real world type of people who are just like, you know, like living in their own man's world, so detached from reality. Yeah? But, okay, so a part of that criticism is fair. It's not like, you know, they don't have a valid cause for concern. But at the same time, we must also realize that economics has to be a model. It can't be an accurate depiction of everything that goes on in our lives. I mean, I did a Google search yesterday, and I said, what is the world population at the moment? The answer was 7.125 billion. Now, when I was in my primary school, we were saying 5 billion people living in this world. You know, 50억 뭐 이랬는데, like now it's like 7.1 billion. 71억이래요. So all these people are breathing on this earth today, making their own day-to-day decisions. I mean, we have rough estimate of about 35 to 40 people in this class, yep? And all of you will be thinking about where I'm going to have dinner tonight. I certainly am. I know where I'm going to have my dinner because my wife's not well, so we're both going to be having porridge and nothing else for the next couple of days. But, if we ask 7.1 billion people, what are you going to have for dinner? We're not going to get anywhere in terms of modeling as a discipline, right? I mean, it's not going to work. So many human beings have so different preferences. Some of you may be really into sushi. Some of you may hate the idea of eating raw fish. And like all kinds of people make up the word, and there still has to be some simplified representations of reality. So, when we say a model is good, it doesn't mean that it's going to be accurate. It's not going to be like one of those paintings by, what's his name? Oh yeah, Seurat, the pointillism, the paintist in the 19th century. 점점점점 찍어서 했던 점묘법이요. Yeah, okay, that's in English called pointillism. And economic models are not going to be like that. It has to be capturing the relevant details, the important details of economic reality. What's going on? How will raising the interest rate affect the economy? How will the crash in the stock market affect it? You would have to have important, relevant details there, but everything else has to be simplified. So it's our profession. We can't ever be accurate, but one of the greatest economists in modern history, John Maynard Keynes, said, it's better to be roughly right than definitely wrong. So that's probably I think of it as a beauty of what I do as an academic. You can't ever be completely right in economics. But at the same time, you can always argue about who is relatively closer to reality. So it's like, economic models are like that in nature. Today I'm going to talk about the market for one-room studio, just one rooms, to be rent and sold as a depiction of how the market works. And I don't think I'll be using up the entire 75 minutes today, but we'll see how things go, okay? Now, as I said last week, in virtually all economic models, there has to be two simple principles. Just write down and remember. And it's like, even in the most complicated models with some macroeconomic models that get published in nowadays in appendix have about 172 variables and 200 and something equations and stuff like that, some of which are redundant, some of which are not, and stuff like that. But it all comes down to two really simple principles. First is what we talked about last week. On Wednesday, optimization. People choose the best thing that they can afford. Yep. So, if we all had money, we would all love to have, Bugatti Veyron, Lamborghini Aventador, and I would wear I can't think of a really expensive men's clothes. Oh, Xenia or whatever. My wife would be wearing, Jimmy Choo's shoes all the time, and only use something like Sisley or Creme de la Mer or whatever. Yeah? But affordability is the thing, yeah? We can if we want to, but we really can't, yeah? You agreed more than anyone else, but okay. I think this is not controversial. People choose the best option that they can afford. We do what is best for us. It doesn't even have to be self-centered. For you, the best option can be being generous to others, giving away charity money to others. That might give you greater pleasure. That's fine. But I think you can't really argue with this optimization principle per se in itself. You can argue when we begin to say the more is better. The more money you have, the better. The best option for you is when I hand you out how many ever goods that you want. Now that sort of things begin to have value judgment, but every person is trying to make the best choice for themselves. It depends on how you define best that things become controversial, but people choosing the best option for themselves is in itself fine. That's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. Second principle, however, is sort of the opposite force that pulls us back to the reality. Yeah? As I said, if I could afford it, I would love to have a Bugatti Veyron Sport. Problem is that it costs about, does anyone know how much it costs? It's closer to $420,000. 4억 4천에서 4억 6천 정도 합니다. No. 250억짜리 차가 어디? But McLaren F1 is about 700,000, I think. Yeah, and there's a couple of. Is there a car enthusiast that knows the exact figure here? I don't know. Nope. Okay, so let's just say that it's $500,000. Okay, and that price adjusts to equate the huge demand for fancy sports cars, fancy shoes, fancy houses. I mean, like right across the bridge, we have one of the most expensive living spaces in Seoul called Galleria 4A, where the top end of the things cost about $4 to $5 million to live. And that's the thing that brings us back into equilibrium. Now, what did I say was the basic economic problem in economics on Wednesday? Does anyone remember? The very basic economic problem. Summarized in one sentence. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. So, limited resources, unlimited ones. Means we have a problem. That's the basic economic problem, right? And that's why this equilibrium principle brings us back to reality. So, if people have unlimited wants, but there's only limited resources, we have to allocate it somehow. And in the market, we do so through the price mechanism. Demand equals supply. If more people want Bugatti Veyron, the price will go up, and only the people that really want it and can afford it will buy it there at that price. Market clears, limited resources are allocated to those who want it. This will be the key subject of today's lecture. So, regardless of however complicated you make things out to be, okay? I mean, we can talk about really complicated models, but it all comes down to just optimization and equilibrium at the end of the day. Nothing more. So, let's talk about the one-room example, okay? Now, some of you may be commuting from home. Some of you are in one of these one-room studios and making your own ramyeon, pap, etc. every day, okay? Yeah? All these paper adverts really represent the market at work, the supply and demand at work. Those who are willing to supply the market for one-room studio apartments advertise. We, as potential tenants in that one-room studios, demand the product. Okay? So we talk about the demand first. To understand the demand curve, when we talk about the demand curve, here's a simple intuition. Let's order everyone in the economy by how much they are willing to pay for that one-room studio apartment. Okay? So those who don't want it at all, would drop out. So people like me, where I have a family of 3, I have a child who's crawling around everywhere, making a mess of my house in no time. Welcome to the world of terrible twos or 미운 3살. So, so in that case, one room is really not an option for me, okay? But leaving that aside, for out of those of you who do want to buy one room studio apartment, suppose that these 11 people here, most of you who have already been in the class with me since 2:30, want the studio flat, okay? Now, your name is, what's it again? 최하성. 최하성 학생 wants it at, he's willing to live in this particular one-room studio at up to 700,000 won a month. So 안동원, 안태원, sorry, yeah. I'll remember by next week or the week after, okay? And the other saying wants it at 600,000, 500,000, 400,000, 300,000, 200,000, going down like that, okay? So demand curve can be thought of as representing how much people are willing to pay ordered from top to bottom. The first person wants it at 700,000, second person wants it at 600,000, the third person at 500,000, just like that. So you can think of someone who really, really wants a one-room studio apartment, okay? Who's really rich, had a massive argument for years with their parents, so can't stand one more day of living with my mom and dad who's going to nag me for hours and hours and hours, so I really want independent life. I've done really well by investing in stock markets. I have a lot of money. I can afford it. I just always wanted the idea of living in one rooms. And I don't know, what other factors can come into, please? Who would want one room? And he's already commuting like 2 hours away, whereas that one room is situated 2 minutes from your beautiful girlfriend or boyfriend's house, so you can be with each other a lot more, yeah? Instead of, you know, like taking your girlfriend back home, takes an hour to get there, take the last train back home. Okay, so this is what I was doing like past 5 years, 10 years back. No, because like my current wife, actually that's not a good example. Let's use a more neutral example. Say my previous girlfriend before that. How is that even a better example? Lived way outside at one end of Seoul. Actually, she lived. Let's just say she lived somewhere the Wongu area, and then my house was at Gwacheon. So if we were to have a nice meal at Gangnam-yeok, and then take her all the way to Sangye-dong, say, and all the way down back, ageism. I mean, like, not a great thing to be doing for years and years and years. But luckily, that was a long-distance relationship, so I only had to do that for 3 months every year. The rest of the time, I was in the UK, so that was okay. Now, and there was even a more complicating factor being her university being at the other end. But I'm not going to go there, okay? I'm not going to go there. Now, so that in that sort of circumstances, your valuation for one-room studios will be a lot higher. You know, you might be even willing to live in that flat even if the landlord offered 2 million won a month. 200을 줘도 하겠다. Okay? So we call this maximum willingness to pay a person's reservation price. That's the maximum price that you're willing to pay. And in our everyday decisions, we all have our own reservation price about everything that we encounter. We have our reservation price for that bottle of San Pellegrino that they sell at the mini stop. We have our own reservation price for Kakao Black Taxi. Example I gave last Wednesday was, if you're stuck at Gangnam-yeok at 12:35 in the morning, no taxi is willing to take you. What's your reservation price for Kakao Black? Clearly a lot higher than it would be if it's 7 o'clock in the evening on a weekday. Yeah. So, a demand curve is just ordered reservation price of people, number of departments, 1, 2, 3, like that. Okay? That's a very simple concept. And for a given price, you can also determine how many flats will be taken up. But here's a philosophical principle. Now, I spent my last 3 years in the Korean Military Academy where I had to teach the cadets about how the market system is better, how our ideological system is the winner. But one thing that really I have to get across to you more than anything else is only the people who want that apartment so badly that their reservation price is higher than the going market price will get that apartment. No one will be forced to live in an apartment paying a price that they don't want. So that's a sort of an intuitive way to look at these things. Yeah? The fact that you're willing to buy and live in that one room is an indication that you value. You yourself value that one-room studio more than the current price offered. That's the only reason why you're living there. No one is forcing you to live in that one room. Yeah? Now, what I just said now has a gaping hole to it. Okay? Until now, you would think that economics is a perfect, profession where the allocation will be efficient. But what I've just said until now, I have equated willingness to pay along with ability to pay. Yeah? Now, think about an extremely poor family in Africa. Suppose, sir, your name, if I may, is Anchang Singh is, without prejudice of any sort, born instead in, say, I don't know, Sierra Leone, okay, which was one of the worst hit areas for the MERS, not MERS, what was the Ebola outbreak last year, yeah? Now, suppose that a vaccine for the Ebola virus is up and running, okay? And Chang Singh's cute, beautiful 3-year-old daughter, unfortunately contracted the disease, okay? Now, his willingness to pay to save that daughter will be extremely high. But what is it not being matched by? Ability to pay. That's the problem. When we say this demand curve, when we talk about this reservation price, it's not just about your willingness to pay. I would love to have Bugatti Veyron at $250,000. It's just that I don't have that much to spend on cars. Okay, that's an example of a sort of a vain vanity, my car is better than yours example, but we're talking about life and death, human examples about vaccinations and stuff. And that's one thing I think economics is failing to capture. So our model is not perfect. There are imperfections. When we say we have a reservation price of some sort, in economics, your reservation price only matters to the extent that it is matched by your wallet. So that's one thing to bear in mind, okay? But at the current going price, those that have the malaria drug, those that have that one-room studio apartment, those that have Bugatti Veyron, I should really find another example here, are valuing that product more and they can afford it so that they are there. Yeah? It's just that those who are not having that vaccine, malaria drug, Ebola vaccine, etc., it may not be that they don't want it. It's just that they may want it, but they are not matched by that. Want is not being matched by the affordability issue. Okay? So if we, I've used these 11 students here as an example at first, but the market for one-room studio apartments is a massive one, right? I mean, if we go to, say, Hongdae area, or, closer to our example, Sagandong, or the other side of Wangxinye, the area, it's a huge market. We're talking about hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of rents being in and out, demand being offered, supply being taken every year. So if we generalize this sort of discrete who wants what, we're going to get a nicer, smoother demand curve. Correct? But that still carries the same intuition. That demand curve orders each and every one of you looking for one-room apartment, ordered by the willingness to pay, also matched by the ability to pay. So in a realistic market with large student population, your demand curve will look like this. It will slope downward. Okay? Now, I haven't said anything about whether this is the product of an efficient outcome, people's optimization process, and anything like that. I'm going to talk about that over the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's going to be the subject of that. But as the sort of a starting point, let's just proceed on with demand and supply, okay? Now, at best, demand only represents one side of the market. If I were, I used the football manager example last week. If I were, a manager of a Premier League or Bundesliga or Primera Liga or Serie A or whichever league, I would love to have Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo in my team. Not necessarily together. I'm not sure whether they would have a great synergy, but I would at least have one of them in my squad. But that's only one side of the equation. There's the other side of the equation, that is supply. There is only one Lionel Messi. There is only one Cristiano Ronaldo. There is only one, Iniesta or Xavi or whatever. Yep. So that's the reason why we have this equilibrium. Demand only at best represents one side of the equation. Now, one-room studios are supplied by whom? Those who own the house and want to let out, right? Landlords, we call them landlords. So for simplicity, assume that supply cannot be changed. You can't build apartments overnight. You can't build a house overnight and say, oh, I want to let this house, but there are about 3 bricks, and that's all you have. You can't lend out, right? So in the short run, the supply is fixed. Then our equilibrium will look like this. Regardless of price, there's nothing that one-room landlords can do about, so there are about 300 empty houses to fill. Then, given the demand curve, where they meet is our equilibrium price. I don't know, let's call it 400,000 won a month. 40만 원 뭐. I don't really know what the one-room rates are like at the moment, so let's just assume that it's about 400,000 won a month, okay? What would happen if the current going prices are about, say, 600,000 won? What happens then? Anyone? Let's bring the exchange students into the equation. Suppose that demand and supply would clear at 400,000 won a month, okay? But currently the market price is about 600,000. What's going to be the problem? What's happening here? Surplus of what? Supply or demand or? Equilibrium price should be 400,000. Current price is 600,000. Apartment, the supply, right? Because, why? Because just not that many people will be demanding one rooms at that point. Yeah? I mean, we have 300 empty houses to fill, but only about 150 students will want to live at 600,000 to one. So you as a landlord, what should you do? So your name is Kim Young. Okay. I've asked you three before, and sorry, I remember my name, so sorry about that, okay? So what should we do? What should you, if you're a landlord, what will you do? Decrease the price. You will cut the price. You will cut the competitor and say, I'm going to offer you 550,000, okay? I'm going to make it cheaper, and then someone will come in. Someone will cut to 500,000, and then it's going to move back down towards the excess supply will move back, induce the suppliers, the landlords, to cut the price towards the equilibrium price, okay? What happens if there is the opposite? We have then what? Excess, not excess supply, but excess demand. So there are about 300 houses to fill, but about 500 people want it at 200,000 won. Then the landlord can raise price and say, ooh, I'm not lending you out. You have to pay me at least 300,000, 350, 370. And then that's how you're going to move back towards equilibrium, where until supply and demand are equated. Now, suppose that supply is increased. Suppose that lending out to students is such a profitable business that people want to do that. So I mean, there's this random empty land in the no man's land just outside Gyeonggi, just there, right? A couple of houses. I'm suspecting there must be some sort of aidaki going on at that point. But anyway, suppose that I enter the market and say, I buy some empty space near the university, build nice apartments, and say, I have extra 50 spaces to lend out. What's going to happen to this market? So at the current price, I will be competing with existing landlords and say, oh, actually, I have a really nice brand new housing. I can undercut you at 350. Come and live here at 350, 50,000 cheaper than what you're currently doing. Then the price will fall, right? But human lives are never that simple. Okay? Because the introduction of a nice housing range, new housing block, brand new housing block was 50 for students, I may have installed to attract students, I may have done it like really nice Scandinavian style, all wooden floor, nice heated bathroom, and then Ondo might be the state-of-the-art Ondo system. What am I trying to get at? What might also respond? Yeah, other apartments are the same, but the fact that I'm offering you a nice option of new apartments may also do what? Increase the demand as well. Because, finding a one room is such a tedious process. I'm just about okay living with my parents, even though my two younger brothers are, in the second year of middle school and just like doing a major rebellion on me. They got a major course of 중이병, and then, if I go out to buy a one-room suite, that's a tedious process. It's not really nice. I'm going to be living in a 30-odd-year-old apartment. Not really want it. But then I offer you a new option. Hello. New block, Scandinavian-style interior, heated bathrooms, etc., etc. Then that might induce more people to do what? Actually try independent life, a go. Yeah? In that case, price might not fall. Supply quite often creates new demand. Okay? A really great example of this is in transport economics. Now, does any, without, okay, so you don't have to actually tell me, but some of you here must be living in sort of western end of Jeollado, right? Anyone from that end? No? So my parents, my dad, originally from this place called Gochang, which is in the sort of western tip end of Jeolla province, which is on the southern, southwestern edge of it. Now, until when I was about 10 or 15, the only way to get to that end of Jeollado was through, you take the Gyeongbu Highway all the way to Daejeon, then take the Honam all the way to Jeongeuk, then that. So like around Daejeon area, the traffic was so bad in holidays. I was just like, I would find any excuse not to go to my grandparents' place, because it took like 9.5 hours to get there. And then they're all gonna be like, oh, are you doing better at school? And like, how are you doing in terms of grades? Are you, then all the relatives will be asking you with questions, and they never stop really, do they? You almost have that, right? Oh, do you have a boyfriend nowadays? How are you going with the job search and stuff like that? Yeah. So, and then a new highway opened. New highway, Seohean, and then there were a few other motorways opened, and then everything was great. No, that's not how the story played out. Because the fact that there was huge access to western parts of Korea, especially through that Seohean 고속도로, meant, oh, actually I should buy a car. We can go camping to Busan and Gunsan and Anmyeondo and all the places. So much new demand. The fact that supply increased also increased demand. So demand followed. I mean, I'm not sure whether you've driven to Seohean 고속도로, but it's not any better than what I used to experience in my holidays. Like, it's pretty bad. And the fact, and the line number 9 example I used on Wednesday, that's not a great example. When we built that line number 9 from Gimpo-Gumang to Shinnon and then now to 종합운동장, we all thought that's going to shift the existing commuter traffic demand of line 2 and separate it. But no, what happened was those people who are using bus now started just taking metro. So what I'm saying is supply and demand are not this sort of inorganic thing that you can treat as separate. Triggering one thing can trigger another. And that's a very important lesson to learn in sort of economics. But here's another important thing. Now, we're talking about competitive markets here now. Yeah? Lots of landlords and lots of tenants looking for one-room studios. Okay? So, Miss, your name is? Wang Hiji. So, Mr. Wang Hiji, how would you, suppose that, this would be a great thing to happen in reality. Suppose that you own all those empty houses yourself in Seoul, about 20,000 of them. So you'll probably be one of the richest people in Korea and probably also in the world as well. Yeah? So you are the monopolist. You have the firm grasp, the entire grasp of the Korean housing market to yourself. How are you going to do? Or what are you going to do? Yeah. So suppose that you are the only person who can lend to students. You are the monopolist. Would you choose the same price as before? Why not? Things like that Now he's in jail, thankfully, by the way. Yeah. So competitive markets are not the only sort of market that you observe in practice. In that sort of monopoly market, one person controls everything. Yeah, I mean, you can think of, I shouldn't really think of this as a market, but I have a monopoly on your grades. You know, we can't negotiate, right? You can try, but at the end of the day, it's my decision, yeah? So in that sort of, not a good thing to say in my second class when I haven't had the 수강신청 정정기간 over yet. But if you're a monopolist, what you would do is, knowing that there's no one else who can undercut you, no one else who can offer you a low price and take the customer away, what you're probably going to do is what? Choose the amount. You can leave some houses empty if you want to. Well, I don't care. The profit maximizing point for me is 700,000 won, and I can have 30% of my houses empty, but that's the point where I maximize my own profit. Yep. But suppose that I give even more power to Wang Jackson here. Okay. Suppose that not only you're a monopolist, you know each student in Seoul's preference and their maximum willingness to pay for wonder. What are you going to do then? Suppose you know every student's reservation price, and that's correct. You're like a god, basically. Yeah? How would your answer be different? If I can order each person according to their reservation price and say, you want 2 million, you get 2 million. You want 1.9 million, you get to 1.9 million. Differentiate price like that. Power of price discrimination. Why do you think you get student discounts? Why do you think the airlines operate? Now, think about this. If an airline overbooks, like I used to live in England for about 12 years, okay? I studied in England a lot, but most of the time my girlfriend was, not most of the time, not 12 years obviously, but my girlfriends were back in Korea. Not at the same time, you know, I mean, okay, I'm digging just deeper myself here. But, so I tended to come back about 2 to 3 times every year. Now, if you times that by about 10 years, you stack up about 250,000 to about 300,000 miles. I basically paid nothing and got a first-class ticket on my last way back from England because I had so many miles. But the point I'm trying to get across is economy class and business class and first class, they are all different. They all offer different services, you know, lounge, but nicer food, wine. But that doesn't justify business class being 4.5 times more expensive than economy class. So why do airlines do that? Exactly. Exactly. If I have to be there on a, you know, like if I'm not that bothered about how I get from Seoul to London, I choose economy. But for consumers who have a much higher willingness to pay for that Seoul to London trip, I want nice experience, I really want to be there because my girlfriend is there, then I'll be willing to pay higher price. And one way to distinguish that is say, give them a slightly different product mix. Those with higher willingness to pay would choose higher class. Same with student discounts. Why do you think we get why do you think you get student discounts? Because you have lower willingness to pay as a student. You know, like, I can go to Lotte Cinema to watch The Big Short instead of going to CGV. It's like that. You're more volatile. You can go, if you even if you even if you are on 가로수길, say, hey, if you don't like it, you can just go to another restaurant. And you're a lot more flexible. You're more likely to switch places, which means your willingness to pay on one particular restaurant is a lot lower. So that's the reason why restaurants give you a discount for being a student, to differentiate between customers like me who have a higher willingness to pay, and then those who are more likely to switch between places. Now, last option. New York did this for a long time, and in Korea this is sort of becoming a policy issue as well. What if government steps in and imposes rent control? Suppose if the government says, equilibrium price currently is too high, 400,000 won a month. That's not good. So we're going to say that no landlord can receive money more than, say, 200,000 won a month. Okay? What's going to happen? So, excess demand will happen. So those who get the house will be better off. But those who don't get the house, well, it's not really a nice option, is it? So what I'm trying to get across to you here is there are a lot of different possible arrangements for allocating housing. It's not just, it doesn't have to be a competitive market. We can have a huge monopolist in charge of everything. Think about 1990s and Bill Gates' hold on Windows Explorer and MS-DOS. Or government can intervene and say, this is the maximum price you can get. And there are lots of different arrangements you can get. My question, which way is the best? Talk about this value judgment that easily. It's not easy to do. As you said, some will be better off, some will be worse off. You don't make judgments between that. That's the politician's job to do. That's your job to do on the 13th of April and December next year. It's a choice that that's when the parliamentary elections are, and we have a lecture off on that day, yeah. But please vote before you go to somewhere else, yeah? But in economics, there's one particular type of uncontroversial type of efficiency that we should and we can talk about, which is called the Pareto efficiency. The idea is extremely simple. If an allocation is Pareto efficient, it has one property. In order to make one better off, you have to necessarily make another one worse off. So, if Kim Jong-suk 학생 is to be made better off, that has to come from a lower happiness out of, I don't know, 안창규 학생 or 정재학 학생 or, yes. Exactly, yeah. It is like a zero-sum game. Now, you would think, how is that an efficient outcome? That sounds a little counterintuitive, right? But let me turn the table this way around. Suppose it's not. I suppose there exists something that can make everyone better off. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car, everyone get a car. That's like Oprah Winfrey sort of type of stuff. Yeah? Then, how can you call yourself efficient at the moment? You should have taken that opportunity. That is right there. You can make everyone better off, yet you haven't done it. You can't say you're efficient. That opportunity should have been taken and should have been exhausted already. So, by the time you get to the point where you can be called Pareto efficient, those sort of opportunities should no longer be there. 그러니까 모두를 다 잘 만들 수 있는 거라면, 다 낮게 만들 수 있는 거라면 했어야죠. 그런 게 남아있다면 그걸 효율적이다라고 얘기할 수는 없다는 얘기죠. 효율적인 상태에 도달했으면 이미 그런 것들은 이미 다 하고 난 다음의 상태라는 거죠. So it's this sort of a point where you have exhausted all possible outcomes in terms of making everyone better off. And now it's a zero-sum game. You're better off, then you have to be worse off. You are to be better off, then you have to be worse off. It's that sort of point. Yes? Exactly, yeah. We say that if you're on the PPC curve, you're Pareto efficient. But I'm not introducing that concept yet, so you're exactly, no, that's right. So back to the student housing example. This is one thing I'm going to talk about in terms of rent control. Now, you can't say much about competitive markets, but one thing I can say about rent control is that it's not Pareto efficient. Unless, in the very unlikely scenario, everyone with the highest willingness to pay, highest reservation price, were allocated those one rooms. In that case, it is. But just bear with me for 1 second, okay? So, government imposes a rent control as 300,000 won, and it used to be 400,000, okay? And the person A values it at 400,000, okay? And he happened to have got the apartment just by pure luck. He got the competition away and got there and got that house. I don't have to commute for 2 hours to get to Hanyang University anymore. Great. Now, problem is there's another person, person B, with 2 younger brothers, both at their maximum level of middle school rebellion and just like parents are fighting all the time and etc. So he really wants to be out. He wants independent life. Hey, I'm 21. I've been to the army and I've been back. Yeah. I know what I can do. You know, I know how to make boguri and I know how to make other stuff. I can live on my own. I value it at 600,000 a month, but I can't get a room because of rent control. Can you think of a Pareto efficient, Pareto improving outcome? How? But you can't do that because of rent control. What can you do still? Increase supply, okay, that's one thing, but you can't build houses overnight. Mm-hmm. What's really popular in New York is something called subletting. So person A gets that room and say he can let it to person B and say, actually I own the house so you can live there, yeah? But you're gonna pay me 500,000 a month. I can use that money and happily live with my parents for the time being, okay? And person B can be out and he can enjoy, and both of them will be better off because person A doesn't value that apartment at 500,000 won, so he'll be out. Person B, on the other hand, values it at 600,000, so he'll be in. And everyone gets what they want. This is a Pareto improvement. So what I'm saying is, if you impose something like rent control, you leave opportunities for Pareto improvement. One thing that doesn't lead to any sort of Pareto efficient, Pareto loss or Pareto inefficient outcome is competitive market. If we talk about willingness to pay. So because those who want it really desperately a lot will be at the top of the demand curve. They'll get it. So they can't then trade with anyone else with their lower willingness to pay because it's just not going to work, right? But if you arbitrarily impose rent control, then things are going to happen like that. There will be Pareto improvement opportunities. But what I just to be sure of our perspectives. Just remember what I said just earlier, you know, the fact that there's a reservation price doesn't mean that takes into account of the person's willingness to pay. It's willingness plus ability to pay. So if we begin to talk about the ability to pay and those who are left out of society, left out of economic outcomes, then we can talk about more interesting stuff about inequity, fairness, and stuff like that. But our course will come back to it towards the end of the course, you know, welfare implications and stuff like that. Yes, we will. But for the time being, for the remainder of the course, for the vast majority of the course, I would want you to focus really on the competitive markets and just take the reservation price and willingness to pay for granted. We're going to talk about the limits of how we model this economy towards the end of the course. Okay? Now, so this is just about what I wanted to say today, but let me give you a brief outline over the next 5 minutes about how this course will progress over the next few weeks. Okay? Now, demand and supply are the backbones of economic model. You know, like in a market, there will always be demand and always be supply. But that has to be put in context of optimization. You know, as I said, the basic economic problem is that it can be reduced down to two words: constrained optimization. 제약하에서의 최적화라고 했습니다. Okay? So, what I mean by that is demand and supply can't be thought of as an abstract concept just in the market. Demand as itself and supply in itself, both have to be shown as a product, a byproduct, a derived product of each one of your own optimization process. What I'm saying is that demand captures the result of how each of you lead your everyday life and optimize your choice. You know, let's suppose that, let's suppose 정재학 학생, and I'm just calling your name randomly because, you know, you took my course last semester. Suppose that 정재학 학생 is a blind date this evening. Do you go for Spanish restaurant? Or do you go for Mexican? Or do you go for Italian? Your preference ordering over those have to be eventually translated into how much you're willing to pay for that Italian dinner, how much you're willing to pay for that Mexican dinner, how much you're willing to go for that fajita on the border or tomato or whatever. And then once we've done that for that demand, we have to do the same for supply from the firm's perspective, from the industry as a whole, or the firm's perspective. That supply curve we get has to be derived from each firm's own optimization process. What am I going to do if I want to minimize cost, maximize profits? How much should I supply? How much of this new iPhone should I produce? How much of this new cosmetic product should I produce, if you're, say, Amore Pacific or something like that? So, what we witnessed today will make another appearance towards probably week 7, week 9. But during that process, you will see that this simple concept of demand and supply is actually a lot more philosophical context. It's a product of how you optimize your happiness, your pleasure, given the limited budget constraint, given the limited income that you have. So that's what we'll be focusing on over the next couple of weeks. So if you have time, please read up a little bit on the lecture slides on budget constraint and preferences, and it will be a lot helpful. Thank you. Have a great weekend and see you on Wednesday afternoon.